Hello. Digital banking has changed how we interact with money, from mobile wallets to AI-powered financial services. But behind the buzzwords and billion-dollar valuations, what actually drives success in fintech? Today, we're sitting down with someone who's built one of the biggest digital banking success stories in Asia. Alex Bowen spent over 2 decades at HSBC, rising from a bank cashier to the COO of PayMe, Hong Kong's most downloaded finance app. Under his leadership, PayMe became a dominant force in digital payments, proving that even legacy banks can innovate like startups. But now Alex is stepping into his next chapter, leaving behind the corporate giant to explore new frontiers in fintech and financial services. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks, Tak. Great to be here.
Fantastic. So how does it feel about stepping out of this big corporate umbrella after decades? Liberated, reflective, eager for something totally new?
Yeah, it feels actually it feels really liberating. As you mentioned, I spent all of my working life at HSBC doing lots of different roles, which was great. But I'm really hungry to use the knowledge and skills that I've built to really make a change in the financial world. And for me, I felt that it was the right time to pursue new pastures and start a new adventure and hopefully write the next 20 years of my career history in something completely different.
Now, this move to, let's say, something different, is it a challenge of the bank in particular? Is it a challenge of kind of fintech as a whole? Can you talk a little bit about kind of that and also the challenges that you experience with PayMe within big, large corporate HSBC?
Yeah, absolutely. So, having led PayMe in Hong Kong was a fantastic experience, and it really gave me an insight as to how fast-paced fintechs need to be in order to survive. And I love the agility. I love the firefighting. I love the fact that you could create something on a Monday and have it released in the app to an audience of 3 million people on a Friday. And that ability to deploy really quick, impactful, change that would things that were going to benefit customers, really inspired me and energized me. And I want more of that. I think there are obviously challenges with being in a kind of an in-house fintech, so to speak, because they don't operate on their own. They operate as part of a global matrix. So you've got what you would expect is the normal sort of political verticals where people may want X and actually the market maybe is demanding Y. So for me, I just felt that it was a good time to use the knowledge that I've got to really try and support a different brand of fintech going forward, and help them bridge that balance between rapid deployment, customer needs versus your more traditional build something that's profitable and commercial.
If you had to rebuild, let's say if you were to rebuild PayMe again with kind of a blank slate starting off from day zero, what are some of those things that you've learned then and how would you do it differently now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I think if I take a step back and have a look at the kind of fintech market, let's say it is really quite interesting because in terms of how banks generate revenue and profit, it's 80% of it comes through lending and wealth. And in order to do both of those, there's so many things that you need. Capital, a big balance sheet, a good appetite and tolerance for loss. These are all the things that fintechs are really not able to just get. And the biggest thing underpinned is trust as well. You're not going to put your wealth with a fintech with no track record and no history. And that's not me saying that. That's the market showing that just doesn't happen. So fintechs typically look to grab market share at the lower profitability segment, payments, current accounts, and fintechs have proved that they're really good at doing that. And you can look to most markets, and there's a dominant couple of use cases where fintechs have gone in, solved a pain point, made something really better, grown market share. And I think the challenge, and back to your question, what could we do differently with PayMe? I mean, we certainly were able to launch a product in a market that worked, there was appetite for, achieve rapid growth. But for me, it comes back to a strategy point, and I think that's also something that some fintechs do tend to struggle with, and that's really having that ability to strategize about exactly what you're going to build in order to start commercializing. And forward thinking, okay, when we get 1 million customers, what's that going to look like? When we get 3 million customers, what's that going to look like? I think there is a view that strategy can just be, rigid and on a document and hung on the wall, and that's the strategy. But the best strategies are rewritten and rewritten week on week on week. I think you can have sort of a North Star that you're going for, but you need to be nimble enough, as fintechs are, to kind of move forward and start changing that. And I think if that strategy was really clear, I think there would have been a lot more opportunity to commercialise not just PayMe but lots of other fintechs a lot earlier on in their life cycle, and then that gives you a lot more opportunity then once you're starting to make revenue.
Interesting. So actually, on the PayMe level, you don't have to disclose directly, if it's super confidential. But how long did you spend time to craft that strategy, and then how often did you revisit that strategy to, like you said, to be tactically nimble?
Yeah, well, I
Do you
think
think that was the right amount of time?
yeah, if you just using open source information, PayMe was created in 2016. It was it was kind of your classic consultancy job. Accenture was supporting HSBC, and I think they said, "Hey, there's this Venmo product. This could work in Hong Kong." So that was kind of how it was born. If you kind of look at the life cycle from 2016 up until around 2019, it was purely just peer-to-peer payments. From sort of 2019, then there was a small commercialization strategy of accepting payment through merchant, and over the years we've seen that grow. There's no money to be made in peer-to-peer payments. If I send you money on FPS, no one's getting a cut of that. But if I use any payment method to shop at the DownLo store, whoever's providing that service for you is going to take a cut of what you're selling it for. So that's where the commercialization and the margin is made. So having that in mind a lot earlier on about, is this going to be the sole source of revenue, or how can we use the revenue that we generate through that to then start building and diversifying other revenue streams, then you start to become a little bit more self-sufficient with your strategy. So that's something that I supported with in my time in PayMe. I was central to that commercialization strategy and working out how we essentially take a really strong and sticky book of customers and help convert that into customers who use PayMe as a wallet, like they would Alipay, WeChat Pay, credit cards, etc., because that's how you generate the revenue.
Right. Now, taking on that kind of view of how would you build things differently now, would you, du jour is the topic du jour is cryptocurrency and blockchain and all that type of jazz. Would you incorporate, actually, what's your opinion on that? Would you incorporate elements of that into, again, if you were to rebuild kind of PayMe this moment, this time?
Absolutely not. No way.
Why not?
So I absolutely I'm not anti crypto. I might think NFTs are a bit strange, but in the principle of cryptocurrency and blockchain. There's many future use cases that are really good. But as we live in this world today, I mean, there's no real use case for it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, for a start, it's not regulated, so there's no. You would end up spending an awful lot of energy as a regulated entity trying to convince whoever's regulating you that you should let this volatile product into your product shelf. Now, yes, there's lots of different ways that you could tailor and structure that, but then what use case are you really solving? If it's crypto just to do a P2P payment, well, the infrastructure already exists, so why try and replace something? If it's buying currency in order to hedge that it will grow and make money, okay, but there's lots of strict regulation around that, and you can only imagine, if you just take a look at some of the recent rug pulls in the US, if those firms were licensed and regulated, how is the consumer protected against that? So I absolutely wouldn't have chosen to put any energy into that space, because I still think it's so embryonic, and it needs that regulation in order to be more of a stable platform. That's when I think then fintechs will start bringing that into their ecosystem.
Did that ever come up? Did cryptocurrencies ever come up in discussions within the bank?
Yeah,
It
a
did.
few times. A few times. More just thoughts on it. I think what I was really pleased about, certainly working with HSBC, is where there were things that were maybe on the periphery of being mainstream. There would be some very clear guidelines on what our risk appetite, or what HSBC's risk appetite is. And the CEO at the time was on record of saying that that's not a business that we want to get in. So I think that's fine, because then it allows you not to spend any energy and resource and money thinking about it. It just allows you to focus on what's in front of you, which sometimes I think is the right thing to do.
And let's say vice versa, right? So if you were, we started from, if you build HSBC PayMe now, what would it look like? If you were to build a digital bank, what do you think they could learn from, an actual kind of banking, a fintech within a bank? What do you think some of the best practices that they could learn from you and colleagues like you?
Yeah, I think, well, there's lots of use cases, especially in emerging markets, for new digital banks to sort of enter the field. I think a few things that they can learn, definitely. And firstly, it's an old saying, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. I know, having done some consulting with fintechs, there's a lot of impatient investors that that really want whatever they've got to be that billion-dollar unicorn. But building a bank, the fundamental ingredient is got to be trust. If you're a custodian of somebody's money, that means something, and if you take that for granted, then the market will react to that. Customers will leave. You won't be profitable. So I think having that in mind, it starts with that strategy of, well, what use cases are you really going to solve as a digital bank? What's your purpose? Are you going to just upset the status quo, or can you do things a lot differently, a lot better? And you've got to be constantly reviewing your deployment strategy against the market, because the other thing about digital banks is they've been around for a while globally. So it's very easy now for incumbent players to bring talent in that's used to that, and like PayMe did with Venmo, effectively just copy the product and launch it into their own ecosystem. So I think it's got to be the right conditions at the right time, solving the right use cases. But I think the environment at the minute is shown that digital banks, when they get that right, can really thrive and really start to take market share and show that there is space for this technology in banking, that will last, the next 100 years.
What you've recently written a Medium article about actually on emerging markets and digital banks. Are there any particular markets that do excite you and kind of want that long-term relationship, or perhaps they didn't have a long-term relationship with the digital bank or a bank in the past?
Yeah, I think certainly looking at Southeast Asia, being in Asia, a little bit more familiar with the market there, I think certainly the Philippines stands out as somewhere that's really ripe for digital growth and acceleration in the banking space. I think looking at more established markets, there's a lot of saturation, and the gap is kind of narrowing as to whether new entrants will be able to survive or fail. But certainly the Philippines seems that there's space there, and there's that kind of right amount of opportunity going forward. So that would certainly be probably the one place I would be looking to at the minute. But also, with English being one of their business languages, I'm probably a little bit biased. It would be a challenge for me to go into many other places at this point. But I think looking at other places in Southeast Asia, I think it'd be quite easy to sort of look at what's worked, what hasn't worked. But most importantly, you've got to customize it to the market. You can't just copy paste and hope for the best. You've really got to customize it to the not just the market culture, but the way that people do business. I wrote in that Medium article. I gave an example from years ago when HSBC and Citi tried to launch credit cards in India, and it completely failed because the market wasn't ready for it. That wasn't how people did business. Yes, they used cards, but it wasn't solving a pain point that existed, and executives, I'm sure, in London had got the PowerPoints up with how much money this was going to make because there's so many people in India and they all use cards, and we've got this card product and this is how they're going to use it. But it didn't. Now, obviously, fast forward to today, yes, the market's changed, but you can't always guarantee success. You've really got to understand the market nuances in order to be able to launch a winning product.
Here's another technology that's coming up, obviously, that's been around, AI. Where have you witnessed AI being used, perhaps with the workflow of within a bank, with the individual's workflow, or even kind of institutionally on a corporate level? Where do you think that, and how does that impact building a digital bank?
It's a good question about how it can impact building a digital bank. I think introducing it into a new digital bank is a completely different use case to using it in an incumbent bank. If I just firstly look to an incumbent bank, the most obvious use case to me is using it for efficiencies. Incumbent banks have got a wealth of information, policies, indexes, procedures. Being able to just navigate those and find the answer either for a customer or for a colleague. AI has also got a brilliant ability to write stuff as well. So you think about all the letters that have to be sent out. At the minute there's an industry of writing it. You've got to get copy on it, editing it, tweaking it. Starting with a 95% version is a lot more efficient. So I think there's huge efficiency use cases for the incumbent banks. For digital banks, though, I think it's completely different because they don't have the efficiency challenges because there's limited infrastructure. So I think in new digital banks, AI effectively is going to be on a par with your FTE, your resource. The recent article out from OpenAI looking at monetizing their product. You can have a PhD level OpenAI for, I think, is it $20,000 a month. So I think licenses will be bought to do certain things, and they will be as valuable as FTE. And I think that though how they use those licenses and how they use that AI will completely depend on exactly the problem that they're trying to solve. But I think it won't be uncommon, perhaps in the near future, to see a larger proportion of a workforce's headcount be monetary spend on AI subscription versus where we are at the minute, where it will largely not form a part of their workforce.
Thank you for your time, Alex.
Thank you.